Yes, it's true. I'm moving away from Canon. Now, before we get into this, I mean, I understand that like there's no way to talk about this without having some type of like clickbaity title. Also, I want to mention that it doesn't really matter. You've probably heard a lot of different people say that. It doesn't really matter. You can take great pictures with a lot of different cameras. But I am moving to Sony just because I've rented a Sony camera and I really enjoyed the experience of it. I felt that it went well with the workflow that I want to have, and therefore I'm gonna be moving over to Sony. And there's a lot to be said about Canon. A lot of people bring up the fact that their color science is amazing, and I definitely agree with that. But at this point, I really think that for what I do, moving over to a Sony is definitely the better option. So I'm not here to convince you that you should also go out and buy a Sony. That's not what this video is about at all. Mostly, I just want to talk about why it is that I am going to a Sony. I've had a Canon for about a year and a half now, and I've really enjoyed it. I've really liked it. It was my first DSLR camera. It's been an amazing experience. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of the settings. I've learned a lot about photography and videography in the past year, but there are some frustrations that I've had. I was looking into a full frame camera because I want to do portraits and weddings. Full frame lenses on an APS-C sensor is really difficult. I currently have a Canon Rebel T7i. I've put some really nice Canon glass on it, and don't get me wrong, the pictures turn out really well, but at the same time, I don't get the same focal range that you would get out of a full frame. I knew I could not afford the Canon 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV. I was looking at the 6D Mark II, but I was a bit disappointed with some of the features of that camera. I love that it was full frame. I love that it had a flip out screen because that makes doing these type of videos a lot easier. But something that really bummed me out was the fact that the 6D Mark II didn't have dual card slots. I've heard from many experienced photographers that you need to have dual SD card slots for things like a wedding. The 6D Mark II doesn't have dual card slots, so I knew that it wasn't really an option. The 6D Mark II doesn't have a lot of modern features, which is really frustrating for me. Right now, all of my videos have been in 1080p, and that's okay for now because I feel like a lot of people don't have 4K devices. Let's say that 4K doesn't matter right now. I know that in 2, 3, 4 years from now, it is gonna matter. I don't wanna put $2,000 into a camera body that does not have 4K video. Two things that really sold me on a Sony camera were the electronic viewfinder and eye autofocus. Now, if you don't understand what these two things are, the electronic viewfinder is different from an optical viewfinder, which you would find on a camera like the Canon that I'm shooting on right now. It means that when you're taking pictures and you're looking through the viewfinder, you're really seeing it before your ISO and your shutter speed is calculated. So a lot of the times this requires you to chimp, right? So you take the picture and you look at it just to make sure that the picture came out the way that you want it to come out. With an electronic viewfinder, all of that is in the electronic viewfinder. You see the picture as you're taking it as it's going to be when it's taken. That is a huge time saver, and especially for someone like me, I hate having to fiddle with settings all the time just because I feel like you miss the shot sometimes. The other thing is eye autofocus. You know, if you take pictures, you understand probably the whole focus and then you recompose type of thing, right? So wherever your focus point is, in your viewfinder, you try to focus on the eye, let's say, for a portrait, and then you recompose so that everything looks right. Sony has this thing called eye autofocus, which is amazing because then you compose the shot however you want to. You press the eye autofocus and the eye is what's in focus. This saves so much time. In the times that I've used eye autofocus, I've realized that there are so many shots, so many moments that I've missed because I did not have eye autofocus. One of the things that has been talked about a lot when it comes to Sony is that there aren't a lot of affordable lens options, but it seems that this is going to be fixed. Sony itself has come out with quite a bit of more affordable lenses. In addition, Tamron and Sigma have announced that they're gonna start making FE lenses. Sigma announced, I think, something like 14 different lenses. Tamron has a 28 to 75 millimeter coming out. In terms of affordability, those lenses are also gonna gonna be really great. There's an article that I'll leave in the description that points to how sharp Sony lenses are. A lot of the times the Sony glass beats out both Nikon and Canon glass. But in summary, what does all this mean? Again, I'm not trying to convince you to move to Sony. I'm just telling you why I have decided to move over to Sony. I feel like the things that I had been looking for make sense in a Sony camera. So I ended up buying a Sony a7III, and I'm just waiting for it to actually arrive. Does this suddenly mean that that Canon or Nikon camera that you bought a week or a month or a few months ago is obsolete and, you know, like terrible? No, that's not what I mean at all. A creator can create from anything, right? There's a whole community of iPhone photography, so you don't need any big camera to do anything, right? Here's what I am saying though. I think it's good to keep an open mind about all the different camera brands out there. I was completely shut off to any idea of buying a Sony camera because I thought Canon is the best. Canon has amazing color science. A lot of people that I respect use Canon. That's all good and everything. I mean, you know, there's nothing bad with that to a certain degree. Now that I think about that, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Being loyal to a particular camera brand isn't smart. What is smart is whatever gets the job done in the best way possible. I constantly tell people that ask me whether I'm an Apple fanboy because I have a lot of Apple products. No, I'm not an Apple fanboy, and I would be willing to move to any company that does something better than them for what it is that I do. I don't think that there's another company that does what Apple does better. But if that were to be the case, I mean, of course I would move because that makes sense to me. I buy things that help me get my work done. If 2-3 years from now, Sony is no longer innovating the way that they are right now, I'll buy a different camera. I want to buy the thing that helps me get the job done as quick as possible and as pain-free as possible. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more of these type of videos, I also talk about other type of technology, gear, product reviews, movie reviews. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much again. Have an awesome day. Bye.